Here we go.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show, This Strange Reality with Dave Emmons. And not only is it strange with UFOs and ETs and all this other stuff, and these committees that are coming out and leaking little bits and pieces of information. I was just talking to my buddy here, Mark Olly. He's going to be on the show here, and I'm gonna pull him in just in a minute or two. But we got so many things going on around the world. We got tariffs. We got people arguing over Canada going to war with the U.S. Yeah, that's a lot of internet hyperbolic talk. That shouldn't even be talked or even discussed. It's bad business, and that's what's going on in the world. But let's be hopeful that things will settle down. Everybody just start talking honestly with each other and dealing fairly with each other, and that means politics too. I mean, this is for entertainment purposes, but politics is getting way out of hand. We should they should let President Trump do what he's going to do and see how it works. He hasn't been in there long enough to make his plans work, so we don't know. I'm talking to Mark Ollie, and he's from the UK, so I don't want to stomp on the European tariff situation. I don't know how that's going. We don't hear much about that, Mark, but we hear a lot about Canada. It's they're kind of having a hissy fit, and also Mexico. They're talking about uh, uh, coming back at us with something. I guess I don't know what they're thinking about, but uh, Mexico we haven't heard too much from. But here we go with the show, and I hope everybody's joining in and listening. And we have some very interesting guests, and we got one here that's a return guest. He's been on my show several times. He's a great guy. I like him. He's a musician, and I think that's how we fit together in our thinking. Us musicians, we're a little bit deranged on the right side, I think, Mark.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. But the derangement brings out creativity, just like an artist. So okay. Mark Ollie is an internationally recognized author, TV producer, presenter, writer, lecturer, broadcaster, musician, and artist. And he has a band now, and he's playing. He's a drummer, and they have an album. They just let loose here, Layla. Let you. He'll talk to you about that. He is a visiting lecturer at Winslow Guild and the University of Chester. Mark also heads up his own archaeological unit. Mark met the Rolling Stones. He played a gig in a concert hall where his band just played. He didn't. I mean, he just played there, and then the guy, I guess the Stones were coming in. But Mark said he wasn't the opening band, but he was one of the I guess front bands or whatever. But he was there and he met those guys. His band is called Copperworm, and presently the band is called Wolf. You can find his books on the Flying Disc Press, Philip Mantle Publishing, and Mark Ollie on Facebook, and Google Mark Ollie on Amazon and Kindle books. He's got, my goodness, what, 9 books now, Mark?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And Mark, tell us a little bit about what's going on, and are your price of eggs way up now?
What a place to start, dearie
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're suffering too. Our eggs are all over the place. The band I was with, Copperworm, released an album about 2 springs ago, so that's not too long ago. You'll find that on various download sites and what have you. The band I'm with at the moment called Wolf. We've got a big summer gig coming up in the UK. We're doing reasonably well as well. Two different bands. It was a support band I was associated with when I met the Stones back in the day in Manchester. So that's another story. That's a story for another night. That
Yeah.
comes from a different lifetime altogether. Yeah, there's all sorts of things going on. We're not being run particularly well over here at the moment by our government. That's probably why you're not getting any reports because whatever it is, it'll be negative press, it'll be negative PR. They're just not doing terribly well over here. They seem to just be intent on saving as much money as they can at any cost. Uh, so it's a chaotic world, a crazy world we're in at the moment. Um, we do get news from the USA. We get news about what's going on with Trump and Canada and what have you. But obviously, we're lagging a bit behind you guys. You live there. We're sort of, we're getting it a few days delay. So you're ahead of us. But yeah, it's a crazy world.
I know you can't
Mm,
talk too much because I know the British government has taken some. I'll say this as an American, they've
mm.
taken some of your freedom of speech away, and you got to be careful what you say. So I don't want to get you into politics or anything like that, but the price of eggs I thought was good to start with. So
Well, yeah. I mean, if the government over here want to come and arrest me, come and get me. They know where I am. I'm quite sure they know where I am by now. So I've got a very sort of come day go day sort of attitude towards that. Yeah, we're they're trying to stop us from talking in pubs. They're trying to do all kinds of crazy things. They're getting access to secret parts of people's internet accounts. They want to access bank accounts. It's kind of going a little bit more towards communism than it has been in the past, which is a shame, really, because we thought this new government was going to kind of sort things out and be what they've been in the past, but clearly not. The new order is something quite different. But apparently, it's happening all over the world. I
yeah,
mean, Trump is very different this time around. Things
right.
things are very different.
Well, with Canada, they got a new prime minister or president there.
Mm,
His name is Carney or something like that, I think,
mm.
and he's the same political makeup as Trudeau. He's
Well,
matter of fact, he's more left than Trudeau.
it
So
sounds very similar to here.
yeah, and so but there's people that are mad about that, and they might
Mm,
even try to boot him out. Uh, I just saw a percentage on the internet. I don't know how much you can count internet stuff, but this show is true, people. This is true. These are real people that are had these investigations and experiences. But what I'm saying is, I've been hearing internet, chatter about Canada being mad and all this other stuff, and then I just saw a poll. It said 50 if the U.S. attacked Canada, and that's a big lie, that's a big
mm.
internet hoax. They said how would the people feel, and they said 57% of the people would help the U.S.
Yeah.
and 27 said they didn't care one way or the other.
Uh,
And then you only got about 20% who's pissed off, and we have that here. We have the same thing here.
uh,
Trump won by majority, and I wish they'd let him have a chance. I know
yeah.
we had some dealings and remarks about Biden while during his administration, but actually that administration for 4 years basically is just like what you're experiencing in Europe, and
Yeah.
it's the new world order in which they're trying to bring in. And the
Yeah.
best way to bring it in is bring it through communism, and then socialism, and that way they have you by the short hairs, every way possible. If the government gives you your food and your work and all this other stuff, then they own you in a way. They can tell you what to do.
Yeah. You're a government employee from that
Yeah,
point on. Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get on the
Hmm.
page. I know we could talk about this probably quite a bit, and I'll probably get your butt in trouble over there. I don't want to do that. So let's go on something that I think a lot of people have been bringing up, and I think we didn't go over this last time. I see a lot of people talking about the end times. They're talking about Jesus coming back, and then you have some people say, no, it's not going to be Jesus. It's
Mm.
and the I guess also they're saying that the I'm not sure if I can believe any of this, that the evil one is going to take over, the earth, and he's going to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. Uh, I want you to talk about maybe the mysterious Bible and what you know.
Yeah, we can touch on that. Yeah, it's not too far. It's not a million miles away from what we're seeing happening around us. Some people think that we've since lockdown that we've entered that kind of final phase, and people are pointing at different people, going, is Elon Musk the false prophet? Is Trump the Antichrist, or have we got him over here? Is our lot something to do with the end times, or all these world figures? People are sort of looking at them, trying to fit the pieces together. There's some really strange things happening, obviously, in Russia with Ukraine. There's some strange things happening on and off in the Middle East. We don't really know what's happening with Israel. There's a lot of stuff going on that is, in a word, it's different. That's the word I think I'm looking for. It's different. Since we've gone through the whole pandemic and all the rest of it, we've come out the other end of it, and we're in a very different time period to where we were before. If you look at things that you find in the Bible, you look at Revelation, you look at Daniel, you look at all the different prophecies and what have you, it might be possible to construct some idea of what we're seeing here. I mean, is the mark of the beast, something electronic that you can't buy and sell without? Well, actually, it kind of already is, because that's what a barcode is. The three longest bars in a barcode are the three number sixes, so you can't buy or trade with it anyway. So that's already here. The other side of it, with prophecy as well, and with biblical stuff, people automatically assume that it's all going to come at once. Someone's going to fire a starting pistol, and the end is going to come. Wham! There it goes. No, I mean, my experience is that things happen over a very long period of time. So you might only have one element of something introduced, like the barcode, you can't buy or sell without the mark of the beast. That might come in, and then that's it. You don't get anything else for ages. And then something else might come in, and then something else might come in. And, the riders of the apocalypse are the famous ones, because, you've got, which one came first, nobody really knows. But you've certainly got death and famine and, all that side of things. They're sort of riding across the earth, but they came in one at a time. They didn't all suddenly arrive at once. The bus didn't pull up and they all got off. It's kind of, you had one of them going, and then that one was joined by a second one, and then that one's running. Then your pestilence and all the rest of it comes along, and that's the third one's joined on. But it's over decades. The structure of that is enormous. So if you get anybody sort of pointing at a particular time and going, well, it's going to be at 10 o'clock on the 25th of December in 2035, well, guaranteed it won't be then. That's guaranteed it won't be then, because nobody really knows. Even Jesus said it. I mean, in the Bible, if you look at the mysterious Bible, Jesus said, I haven't got the foggiest idea when it's going to be. Only the Father, only the big G knows when it's going to be, and he ain't telling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
actually, I got a verse that was in one of my books that said that Jesus said, they asked him when the time is going to come, the end of the world. Of course, that could have been the end of the Roman Empire, maybe that they were talking about at the time. But
yeah, 770 AD, Jerusalem flattened.
yeah, and so Jesus said the end of times will be like in Noah's time when the great flood happened. He said you'll see the Nephilim, the giants, they'll be back on earth. And so that kind of rings a bell, like the Anunnaki coming back. And they've been seeing these big motherships out in our galaxy, and they're kind of heading our way. What do you think about that, Mark?
Well, it's interesting actually, because the topic actually seems to cover everything that we've touched on. Even in previous interviews and what have you. It's an all-encompassing blanket. Mysterious Bible, but that's huge. That is an enormous subject. And once you start to look at what we know now in terms of frequency, interdimensional beings, time and space, when you actually look at proper science, proper firm, hard, scientific developments and what we can do, then it's absolutely not out of the question that some of the things that are described in very colourful terms in the Old Testament, in the days of Noah, it's not entirely impossible that some of those things are going to come back, that we're going to see them again. One man's angel might be another man's alien,
right.
But they're still interdimensional light beings. That's what we're dealing with here. So the thing that fascinates me about Noah is if you do your Bible chronology and you have a look at that, by the time you get to the days of Noah, his particular civilization had about 3,000 years of development. Okay. We've only had about 2,000. They were further ahead in many ways then than we are now. They know what we're perhaps now only just discovering, in terms of technology. People forget that, the Noah's Ark, they just think it's like, a big pile of timber floating on a flood. It's not. There's a lot more going on there. They could have even been into genetics. They could have created an ark that was more scientific than we've previously imagined, as well as mechanical. But they had far longer to develop their culture, their science than we've had. But it's getting pretty close. There are some crazy things happening now.
Yeah, it's just like the books in the Bible. Like you take Enki, and who is that one that I'm about the same age as that one that he's
Oh, you're going Babylonian now. If you mention
yeah, yeah,
Enki and all that, yeah, that's the Babylonian Epic of Gilgamesh and things like that. Yeah, they have some ridiculously long ages that they can live. Now that you mention it, actually, I was on the internet today, and they seem to be cracking the problem of age. They've managed to discover what it is in human genetics now that causes us to age. Not only are they talking about stopping it, they're actually talking about being able to reverse it. So if they get into this situation where they can reverse age us now, then why could they not do it back then? Somebody living 1,000 years is not entirely out of the question. It's getting laughed at less and less.
yeah. I know what'll shorten your years: a lot of whiskey and some bad women. Shorten a man's years, but no.
Yeah.
Uh, I was just thinking about that the Anunnaki and the Nephilim, are they the same? Do you think that they talk about in the Bible? Mark, do you think?
Well, what you're into now is the Book of Enoch. Book of Enoch is extra to the Bible. It's the Old Testament Apocrypha, but they do get an honourable mention. They are mentioned in Genesis, but if you actually read the Hebrew and you look at where the breaks are in the original language, the bit that says, the Nephilim were on earth at that time, and then it goes on to say, and the angels, had the daughters of men and produced these mighty men of valor. Those two statements are actually separate. So it actually quite annoys me when people go to Genesis and they go, "Oh, Nephilim, angels, they take the daughters of men and they produce giants." No, that's not what it says. It doesn't actually say that. If you then go to the Book of Enoch, which is where most of that mythology is coming from, that says something entirely different. That's talking about a different race of people. So to answer the original question, I think the Nephilim, that's one set of people. They are the giants. They are enormous, and they come from somewhere else. In the Book of Enoch, they're virtually interdimensional beings. They descend onto the earth as a ruling class. But then if you also then have a look at what the angels produce, they produce giants. They're the Anak, the Anakim. And they're there as a fact. They exist right through the Old Testament parts of Genesis. And after the flood, they keep going right the way through to David and Goliath. They're still there as a race of beings. So they're relatively solid. They're hard, solid genetic beings of some kind. So I think we're dealing with two separates. That kind of answers your question. I think we're dealing with two separates there. The honourable mention in Genesis is just that. You really need to go and have a look at the Book of Enoch for the full story of the Nephilim. They seem to be like a pre-flood race, that almost, dare I say, post-Atlantean, before the cataclysm, before, everything happens that changes the face of the planet. They seem to be like a civilizing interdimensional race. That's how they appear in the Book of Enoch. And it's worth a read. It's definitely
Yeah.
worth a read.
Now, Enki was supposed to have been the head dog there about with that whole situation. I mean, he had the technology and he actually produced life. Could we say that he could have been an ET? There's a lot of scholars now and scientists saying that the Bible is a lot older, and these stories are a lot older than what we think they are. We just can't put a time or a label on them. And also, I'm going to give you a big package to open up here, Mark. But also, these people that are studying the Bible, they're saying that the Bible is not really true in a lot of different ways. And they said that the writers of the Bible, it was not like Luke, John, Paul, and it wasn't written by them.
Well, that's two different avenues, really, in a sense. First of all, where does the material come from? Well, yeah, totally. I entirely agree with what you just said. because Moses was second only to Pharaoh, and he wrote those first 5 books, clearly having access to something that the Egyptians had. So it's coming out of a previous history that was probably kept in one of the temples, which, funnily enough, is exactly where Solon got the story of Atlantis from. He doesn't beat about the bush. He got that from somebody in an Egyptian temple. So the whole origins, if you like, of the stories you find, they're basically coming from Egypt. They take you back to Egypt. The idea that the Bible was written perhaps by different people than that to which it's credited, I would say yes, there's quite a lot of scholarly evidence to say that there was, a lot of mucking about, if you like, over time with the material. But this is where it gets really important. Forget Michael Drosnin's Bible Code, scrap that. That's Sudoku. It's a pile of nonsense. If you go and have a look at the actual Hebrew Judaic Bible Code, and you have a look at what they did when they put that into a computer, there is an absolutely mind-blowing set of Bible codes that run through all 66 books of the Bible, because the same code system works in Hebrew and Aramaic, and it also works in Greek, and to some extent you can make Latin do the same thing. But there are codes in there that can only really be cracked by a computer. Now, we can't reproduce them. As human beings, we have no idea how to reproduce the level of code. I won't go into it because it's phenomenally complicated. We could do a whole night just on that one topic. But in a nutshell, the 66 books of the Bible have got the code, and the books that they left out of the Bible have only got bits where the code crops up. They're not complete. So whoever it was that did it very clearly knew exactly what they were doing. That's what I'm coming to, okay? So really, in a sense, it doesn't matter if they're called Bob or, John or Fred or whatever. It doesn't matter what the name is. The person responsible for putting that book together as we've got it now knew which books were the right ones and which books weren't. Okay, so the ones with the Bible code all the way through, they're in. That's the 66 books. The other books, the Old and New Testament Apocrypha, they don't have an intact code. So there you go. So there is a way of testing. There is an actual computer way of converting everything back into numbers and then into the codes.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to do a little bit more, the very first guy to spot it was a guy who came up with septenary design. He was a Russian agnostic mathematician called Ivan Panin, and there's very little known about Ivan Panin because he was early 20th century, and he spotted patterns of the number 7. So he discovered in the Old Testament that these patterns were running through it. After that, it just went nuts. He was only the first of many to discover it. And Michael Drosnin was brought in as a cover story to cover up the fact that the Judaic computer models had unearthed something that clearly seemed to prove the evidence of the existence of an almighty creator, a god. In magic, they always say the universe is in mathematics. Mathematics is in the universe. Well, it's absolutely true. And that is doubly true for the Bible. It's full of these codes.
Now you see now with a lot of this new, I guess, investigations. I don't know who's making all these decisions, scientists or whatever, but they're saying that God wasn't the God. We pray to God, but they said that God is not really the real God. Elohim and something and another name comes up in the Bible that was God.
Yeah, you can blame the Nag Hammadi library for that because all of a sudden they found some Gnostic books, Gnostic Gospels, and various things like that, and they have the demiurge. So the urge is the main god that nobody gets anywhere near. That's like the big G, the invisible almighty. And then the demiurge is like very similar to that god, but a lot smaller and made a lot of things that are physical, which the big god didn't do. But then that means the physical is evil because it's less, it's lower than. And that's Gnosticism. That's what the Gnostics came up with. Actually, El is a very ancient god, El, that you find in the Old Testament. It's a prefix. You get things like, God Almighty, God loving, El Elohim, El Nisai. You get all these different names. But El, the prefix, El is a prehistoric deity. You can trace that right the way back beyond Babylon and Persia. It's a very early deity. So actually, it's the other way around. El is probably the Urge, the Almighty, the big G, as opposed to the lesser one. Jesus never made that distinction. So depending on what your position is on the New Testament, he just had one. You know,
Didn't
Good.
Jesus study with the Gnostics a little while? Uh,
Well, he disappeared off to Egypt age 3, and when he came back at 12, he gave the Jewish high priest in the temple a real run for the money. So it's very clear that when he was in Egypt, he clearly, studied a tremendous amount. And it tickles me up actually, because when I went to Egypt, I met there's a church out there called the Coptic Church. I think it's about 12% of the Egyptian population are Copts. And I met quite a few of these guys, and they just said, "Oh, we know exactly where he went. We've got a map. We know all the villages that they stayed at. We know, we've got sacred sites where Jesus stayed. We know where he went and all that. You can buy a guidebook over there. I'm sure somebody gave me one that shows you where all these sites are." And I'm thinking, nobody ever told me this. We in the West never get to hear about it. The missing years, the lost years, and oh no, they're fine. They know exactly where he went.
yeah. A lot of people now are saying that extraterrestrials have their fingerprints on the Bible going all throughout the thousands of years of our history, and our history is not totally correct. We haven't been really told the truth. We've been controlled. Then they say the Bible was brought about. Constantine brought about 325 AD, somewhere like that. They wanted the Bible that would help control people, tell them that this is a sin,
Well,
don't do this, don't do that, and they control them. What do you say about that, Mark?
I think there's still enough evidence for UFOs in there. You got Ezekiel's whirling wheels. You've got Moses, getting the Ten Commandments out of a blazing cloud of fire on top of a mountain. If it was one of our daily tabloids reporting any of this, they would have it in there as UFO, unidentified flying objects. Strange lights in the sky. Fire. There are all these kind of weird things going on. That's precisely how they would report it nowadays. So you're only looking at the way that they were reporting it in the past. Constantine, at the end of the day, fabulous Roman emperor, but not really very savvy when it came to biblical matters. Yes, it was a church council that decided in the 4th century which books stayed and which books went. But, and this is the kicker, it's back to the code again. They clearly knew which books qualified as being inspired by, this almighty power that had, overseen the survival of these documents for 4,000 years. They clearly knew which ones were the right ones and which ones weren't. And we're benefiting from that knowledge now. So, it's kind of, I don't think it was just Constantine. I really don't. He was like a referee. He was a ringmaster at a many ring circus, and he had to sort of kick ass and keep all these people in order. Being that he was a divine emperor and all the rest of it, he kind of stepped in and just kept them on track. But it's down to the various religious authorities and what have you made the decision as to what stayed and what went. And we've still got a lot of the material that they left out as well. It didn't all just disappear. I'd love to know what's in the Vatican archive. I'm sure they've got more than we know.
Yeah, they
Um,
do. They do. They've been talking about it, and Pope Francis kind of slips about it in the last couple of years.
uh,
But he actually been telling us some secrets, and that's pretty cool. But you look at the Egyptian. You talked Egyptian a while ago. You look
mm,
at their history. They had 14 commandments, and we had
yeah,
10. Christian Bible. They actually, I think, the Christians followed a lot of what the Egyptians had, and they put that in the Bible, and the stories go on and on and on and on.
absolutely.
And the flood could have happened 500,000 years ago. We don't know. The stories, everybody has a flood story.
Yeah.
Every race and every country has a flood story. So the flood is true for the end of the world. But I'm not sure about who controls things. I know we have a God, a source, and that's what I call him, a source. And I
Mm.
call I call the creator and source. I don't usually use God a lot of times anymore. And something else you might be able to clear up for me. I've had a hard time saying the word Amen. Mark, because
Mm,
from what I understand, he was like the head honcho Anunnaki priest 40, 60,000 years ago. And
mm.
when they bowed to him, they said, Amen. How much truth is to that, Mark?
As far as I know, most translators have said that as a word, it means I agree, which is why it's tacked on the end of prayers and things like that. In certainly in an AD sense, the last couple of thousand years, it's been used in the sense that it means I agree. Whether or not it has earlier origins, I've not run across that one, I must admit. You've got to be very careful as well with what's out on the internet because the level of scholarship can be a little bit slippy
Right.
sometimes.
I tried to, digest
Uh,
3 or 4 stories that kind of match, and then I think, oh, there could be something to that. But here's what we're going through now, and we're talking like in the Bible too. We're in kind of like a Tower of Babel because everybody's speaking, but nobody understands each other because of the disinformation and misinformation and the elites who control the world. And I see here you talk about the wisdom of the Templars, and then you talk about
mm.
the history of the Freemason. Uh, Now, are they kind of like the elites, like the Pope and the kings of the world? Are they the elites that are kind of being the puppet masters over us, Mark?
Well, it's kind of a yes or no answer. I've always said in interviews that the people you know about are not the ones that are controlling everything. Okay, so the whole list of names that you've just sort of reeled off, we can put images and we can put information onto the bones of what you've just said. So, like, the Freemasons, everybody knows about them. All the stuff they use, all the ceremonies, everything. It's all online. You can go and find it. It's all out there. And they're a great example because when we had the pandemic and COVID hit, they got obliterated exactly the same as everybody else. They lost a third of all of the lodges. A lot of the members who were elderly just died. That was the end of it. So Freemasonry took an absolute battering. The people I talk about and the people you're asking about, I actually call them the men in grey. So
Okay.
you never see them, you never hear about them, they never appear in the media. They're totally secret. They just wander around like ghosts. And I know that they're out there because one of my research techniques has been to look for missing pieces. So you can get the evidence around the piece of the jigsaw. So you know what the jigsaw piece looks like. And you also know it has to exist in order for everything else to hold together. So you know it's definitely there, but you can't always see it. You know what I mean? You can describe it, you can work out, what you're looking for, but you can't always find it. I first came up with that when I was doing the book on Robin Hood, because Robin Hood is a real slippery character. He's so difficult to find anything out about at all. But I did. I managed to find things out because I came up with this idea of what
Sounds like
shape
a
a
he
piece
sounds like a
should be.
he sounds like a politician.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah. Yeah, real slippy kipper. But anyway, at the end of the day, these men in grey, they are the ones that are controlling things. So when you get, like all the leaders of all the big internet companies and you get people like, Klaus Schwab and all that, WEF and WHO and all these different organizations, it's not necessarily them that you need to worry about because they're public figures. You can see them. You can see Bezos and Zuckerberg and Musk and they're all there. They're not hiding. They're not even hiding in plain sight. They are what they appear to be. But and then you've got this big but. They're obviously not controlling everything. There's something else going on behind that. You know, um, and I've really dug. I've dug and dug and dug, and I've got a rough idea of what shape these men in grey are. But trying to actually get hold of one of them is really difficult. And I have no doubt that I've met them. I've met several leading figures in my lifetime who I've thought, you know what, I think you might just be one of those guys.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you'd never get them to admit it. You would never get them to say so.
It's like what we're calling now the deep state shadow government of
Yeah,
the world and the new world order people. There's a woman, fascinating story. She was with the Epstein crowd,
yeah, yeah.
pedophile island or whatever.
Oh, isn't it funny? They release the files and everybody's blacked out.
Yeah, but this woman come forward and she's got an interview on the internet, and she talks about Epstein was with her by herself, and she was just a young model at the time, and she said Epstein, and here's where this gets a little crazy into the ET stuff, and where the reptilians could have some kind of handle on all this. That she
Shape shifted. I've
he was
heard
a
this.
yes, he was a shapeshifter. Epstein was. She said he shapeshifted right in front of her. Yeah. So I don't know how
Hmm.
much to believe, but she said also Hillary and Bill, they're both of the, she said they're run by shapeshifters.
Well, as a producer, obviously I've worked in television, I've worked in film,
Yeah.
I've done my own series and all this. So I'm fairly au fait with technology. And up to now, I've not seen anything at all on anything on internet or anywhere else that can't be reproduced using CGI.
Right.
Most of it is very good. I mean, there's an incredibly good standard of CGI out there now. It's almost impossible to tell in some cases, but to the trained eye, you can still spot it. So I'm not 100% sure how much of what's coming out like that is true. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I know that in terms of spirit beings and the spirit realm and interdimensional, etc., they can clearly change shape. There's also a biblical precedent and a historical precedent for angels appearing as men or people. You can't always identify them.
Yeah.
They come in
Sodom and
disguise.
yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah was it?
Well, absolute classic. The number of times they pop up, in human form. So I'm not ruling it out. I'm not a disbeliever. I'm actually saying, yeah, it's possible. But whether or not you've got, it's the classic in it, lizard people and 30 odd different species of aliens running around all over the place, and David Icke and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, don't tell me, show me, show me. The evidence is not convincing, it's not compelling at this point for me.
Well,
um
I've actually seen one.
they
Mark. It was a she was a beautiful young lady, probably mid 20s, dark haired. She was a good dancer. I ran into her in a nightclub. My brothers were with me, and she was picked the Michael Jackson song, and she was swirling and dancing like a professional. Beautiful young girl. And my two brothers were younger and better looking than me, but she come up to me with hands like this, and I thought, well, why is she coming up to me? Old guy, and then she backed away, and she thought I'd go up to the bar where she was with her girlfriends and probably talk to her, but I was afraid of her because I felt energy. Well, lo and behold, about a week or so later, my brother went back to get the contract to sign for music, and you know about that.
Mhm.
And so we
Yeah.
finished up the contract, and she was sitting a stool away, a sort away from me, and she was wearing blue jeans and a tank top, white one. And I asked my brother, "Is that the same girl?" Said it looks like her. And my
Mm,
brother said, "Yeah, it looks like her." And then after I said that, I looked over at her. She turned her eye, not her head, her eyes over to me, and there was a green slit in her eye. And that she just let give me a little clue that that's what she was. And that's why I
mm,
was afraid of her energy. That's a shapeshifter, and and God help me, that was really a true story. I'm telling
yeah.
you the truth. The green slit in an eye, and she acted funny. She didn't move her head. It was just like, wow. That,
See, in the old days, they would just say that's it's witchcraft. It's a glimmer spell.
right.
Which is, in the old days, it was a form of hypnosis. It was something that ladies could do to hypnotize blokes. So whether or not there's an element of that going on as well, again, I'm not denying that experience 100%. That happened to you. But then when you start looking at cause and effect, you start working out how, something like that could be achieved. I mean, I had a fabulous friend who was a really good looking lady, and she used to do costume reenactment. And I didn't know that they did contact lenses, and she turned up one day with these weird contact lenses, turned around, and her eyes had vanished. There were no eyes. But it was a theatrical trick, which was a special effect.
Mm.
So there are other things going on. There are, but to come up with an explanation, it's not going to be possible for individual, things like that. What you experienced, clearly you experienced it. There's no doubt about that whatsoever.
Well,
Um,
there was a follow up to that too. About a
mm,
week or two later, I woke up one morning about 5:30 to go to the bathroom, and the sun was just starting to come up. I looked over in the corner where my closet was at. There was about a 5'7", 5'8" reptilian. It looked like a cobra in the face, and it had a kind of like a suit, and it
yeah,
had all the arms, and I jumped out of the bed and I looked and I said, "Oh my God!" It scared me, and I this thing disappeared. It was holographic. It come in through like
yeah,
interdimensional. It come
yeah.
in holographically, and I kind of put the two together. It could have been that gal I saw a week or two prior to that seeing that sighting of the holographic thing. So
I've got to say, I'm not phased. I'd have sat down with a cup of tea, and asked her if it was really her, and chatted about it. And oh, imagine the information you could get. I mean, again, I'm a believer in interdimensional beings, interdimensional travel. I really think that there's enough science, there's enough evidence that, we're living in a multiverse. There's absolutely no doubt about that at all. But to actually get hold of somebody that's coming through from another dimension and just sit down and have 10 minutes, chat, that would
yeah,
just be that would
well,
be absolute heaven, absolute heaven. It's
I,
just a shame it disappeared.
well, I was just telling you earlier that
Yeah.
Representative Comer and Representative Luna
Mm,
come out and said, a few things already to kind of let us know that they're working on things. And they said the John Kennedy assassination, there was two shooters, not one, and we all
yeah,
know. And you can see the forensics is coming this way, and it knocks that.
yeah.
But and then she was saying we do have, these people that are coming in and telling us, the whistleblowers, about the UAPs and also ETs. She said we're coming to the conclusion that if they're ETs, she said they're interdimensional, and she actually used the word interdimensional.
Interdimensional,
I said
absolutely.
great. I said
Yeah,
great. Somebody's talking the truth, and
yeah.
that's what's coming in now. I wanted to ask you. I know we talked about that round drone orb. It was actually not an orb. It was actually a metallic thing that landed on Heathrow Airport runway.
No, it was Manchester here. We got
Yeah.
we got this ball.
Yeah.
It's like a sort of ball covered in like metal leaves, and it was blue, and it came down in Manchester.
Have you had anything else happen since then? We've kind of slowed down here in the States, but they still see these flying drones or whatever they are, and they still see the orbs. I had a brother who took pictures of one he saw almost every night come in. They would took a position in the same area of the sky, and it stayed there a while, and then it moved away pretty fast. And he's had pictures of it, and I put them in Facebook, and we see them every now and
Yeah.
then, not as much as we did back in November, December, but now they seem like they're coming back and they're showing themselves to us. They want disclosure. Do you feel that too? And
Well, I've got an interesting. Let me add another one to that because I like it when things sort of tie up. We had exactly the same thing happen over here. Everything just went quiet, well, dead. But what was really noticeable, as soon as we had Trump asking Elon Musk to start investigating and checking out where American money was going, as soon as that whole thing exploded, all the chemtrails in the sky stopped in the UK. We didn't have any chemtrails. We didn't have any cloud seeding or everything. It just stopped dead. And it stopped at round about the same time as the sightings of these drones and these strange lights and what have you. They sort of dwindled at the same time again. Now, as things have now developed and we're coming back to where we are now, we're now starting to see cloud seeding again. We're starting to get chemtrails and we're starting to get a return of the drones, etc., etc. So I think something that they did at a very high level, something up there at the sort of Musk, Trump government, American, US money, what they're doing abroad, because it's international. At the end of the day, everybody's in everybody else's back pocket. They're all connected, certainly by the money trail, they're all connected. And it stopped. It just stopped in the UK. So I'm assuming that it's an American firm, that's in charge of the drones. And I'm assuming it's an American firm that's doing the cloud seeding on behalf of whoever over here pays for it. And somewhere in that funding stream, somewhere in the organization changed quite dramatically. towards the end of last year, coming into the beginning of this year, and now it's getting, quote, back to normal. I think we're starting to see these things tumble again, which again, it'd be interesting. I mean, especially from your listeners' point of view, is there anything else they've noticed? What else has gone quiet that might be tied into technology, secret technology and what's going on and interdimensional,
No, there's been a couple of universities who said they invented 0 point energy, and they discovered anti-gravity propulsion, and
Yeah.
that's what these drones are. But I don't buy that. I
Oh, hang on a minute, because the guy that actually invented it he was an English guy, and he
I know
invented
we got it, but
1974 he invented it, and then he took his patent over. We saw it in 74, we saw it in 78, then he went over to the States and was never seen again.
yeah, there you go. But I know we got it, but I don't think all these drones and these orbs and these plasmoids, I don't think they have anything to do with our invention of you know
Mm.
anti-gravity propulsion. Also, you bring up the chemtrails. Uh, there's been pictures of planes fitted with these spray nozzles on the back of their wings, and President Trump, believe this or not, he said he wants all chemtrails to stop. Did
Yeah,
you
well,
hear that? Yeah.
he seems to be right in that assertion. I think that's what's happening. We're
Right.
still getting a few of them, but nowhere near the quantity we had before. And the other thing as well that people really do need to remember is there isn't one answer to all of this. So let's just specifically look at orbs. They could be the things that turn up on photographs, which could be, dead people coming back as souls. They could be lightning balls. They could be, electrical discharge. They could be aliens. They could be interdimensional beings. They could be technology, military or civil. They could be guys that are actually physically flying drones of different kinds. Um, it doesn't have to be a one simple answer. And I was chatting to somebody today as well about I think it was crop circles I was talking about. Yes, there are a hard core of genuine crop circles, that are just impossible for human beings to produce something that scale, that size, that detailed in the amount of time available. So there are real ones. Then then you've got people cashing in who are producing their own, and some of them are really quite substandard. They go all the way down to some really nasty, grotty fakes. And
Mhm.
that is absolutely true of everything. You can fake the interdimensional, you can CGI the UFOs, you can come up with all kinds of wacky stories, but then at the same time, you've got the real thing, you've got the genuine thing going on as well. And it's this idea of human beings cashing in on stuff. You really have got to sort out the wheat from the chaff.
Right.
The true from the false. You've just got to get wise to it.
I
But
think half of those things were probably ours, those drones, and
yeah,
we were tracking the orbs, probably
yeah,
the things that are not ours. And how about the plasmoids? Now, this is why maybe Representative Luna said that they're interdimensional, because they have seen these plasmoids. The government has, military knows about them. They have seen the orbs and the plasmoids, and they're coming in through into our dimension. Is that what you think they are, and what she alluded to?
Well, I can't tell you who, but I do have a friend over here that very, very recently started working in the nuclear industry, and they use plasma as a cleaning agent because it'll clean things spotlessly. You know what I mean? They can't have impurities in what they're doing in terms of laboratory work. If she ever hears this, she'll know exactly who she'll know I'm talking about her. But she's working with plasma, and plasma is fascinating stuff. It's so what you're saying about the potential for it to be a sort of intergalactic substance that can come and go, that works in different dimensions, possibility of links to things like wormholes and what have you. It's all there, and we are absolutely 110% mucking about with it at the moment. It's in the experimental frame, and we have applications for it. We do use plasma quite extensively. So yeah, I wouldn't rule that out as a possibility. It could be one of theirs, or it could be one of ours.
And plasma propulsion is actually a real thing. and
Oh
that
yeah, I think was it Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, that have got they've developed a plasma engine
mhm.
that is really efficient. I believe the Chinese are catching up. They might have one of their own. By the time you have a look at some of the scientific sites that are out there, I'm not talking about, gutter press or, sensational news. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual science. If you have a look at some of the science sites, just the stuff that they're admitting to, things that are going on in the CERN reactor and stuff like that, just what they're telling us that they're now able to do is mind boggling. It just blows your mind. Well, if they're telling us about that, that's probably 3 to 6 years old because it
I
takes that long for them to release the information.
I heard 10 to
You know?
15 years are ahead of us.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it depends how big the development is. But then, I mean, if you look at Roswell, I said this to somebody as well fairly recently. You look at Roswell, that's nearly 90 years ago. That crash 1947. That's a long time ago.
I got
That's
a
the end of the Second World War.
I got a
So imagine,
Roswell shirt on.
well, well, yeah. Imagine what you could do in that amount of time.
Yeah.
What have they developed, engineered or back engineered? What's come out at the end of the Second World War that's just gone off into secrecy, and we don't know about it. What are they doing? And it's the same right across the board. I heard recently they managed to turn light into a solid. They've managed to transmit a particle. They did it over the internet, and they got the same particle out that they put in. So they're looking at transporter technology. All the interdimensional stuff we've talked about, all the stuff that's going on in space. Then you've got genetics. We always said that maybe the pilots at Roswell were genetically engineered to fit the craft. Well, now we're talking about, wet computers. We're talking about circuit boards that are alive, artificial brains that can calculate at, breakneck speed. And honestly, it just it pops your head. There's so much of it now going on.
Yeah. You mentioned Elon. He's an
Yeah,
interesting guy. He's actually, working with Trump. He's with the Doge, you know,
yeah.
government economy and everything, and trying to save us money. And he's doing a great job. He's got this rockets that he's builds. He's got Tesla cars. He's got these chips, these brain chips.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
He's helping people walk again, and he's helping them starting to think, their mind,
yeah,
and he's doing a lot of marvelous things. His wife, they interviewed his wife, and I like Elon. I really does. He's probably the most likable billionaire that we have. The richest guy in the
yeah.
world. But his wife, his ex-wife, they asked her, said, "Is Elon really Elon?" And she goes, "You know what? That's a good question." She said, I didn't know him some days, and other days I did." But she said, and they said, "Could he be an ET?" And she actually said he's possibly could be ET, or
Yeah,
he.
I remember that because I remember thinking the last person you want to ask about anybody is the first ex-wife.
Yeah. Don't ask my ex-wife anything.
Yeah, don't ask any of mine either. No, don't go there. Don't go there.
I know a guy who quit going to the gym because his ex-wife joined. She,
Yeah,
I guess she's going to stand there and point him out and say, "Ah, that guy right there."
yeah,
I don't have anything really to be ashamed of, but I wouldn't want, because they can tell stories. But yeah, his wife could have been going along with the interviewer, but I think
yeah,
I find Elon a little strange. Actually, he's very smart, and
yeah.
how did he get so smart? He's just and also they called Trump a time traveler. There's a book written about him, the Trump Code, and it goes back to 1893 with the story of Barron's greatest adventures. And Barron is Trump's son. And
Hmm.
so the book was written by a guy named Lockwood, and it explained that this Barron Trump, he had a guy that was his father or his guardian. His name was Don. So there you go, Don.
Hmm.
And then they said, I know the guy who wrote the book, Troy Anderson, and I have a copy of the book. I've had him on my show a couple of times, and he says that he really thinks that Trump's a time traveler. And this guy's a Christian, and he's
Yeah,
Christianity stuff, but he said that Trump's a time traveler, and that's how he knows that what's going to happen, and that's how he forecasts things, and that's how come he's a real ambitious business person because he knows what can come next. I'm bragging about him. I know there's a lot of people out there
Mm.
that don't like him. I mean, we're talking 35, 40% of the people that don't like him. That's the other party. But I don't know what the other party likes at all. We don't know what they like. So
I'm all for giving a chap a chance.
yeah,
Give him a go and see what happens.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't. I mean, yeah, we had our political feuds, but Trump, when Biden was in, Trump was in court almost all 4 years that Biden was in.
No, I remember that.
Yeah,
Is he the first president of the United States to ever have a criminal record as a result of that? I
yeah, but
seem to
it
remember seeing that
it,
somewhere.
it really wasn't criminal because
No, it wasn't.
they were just trying to get rid of him. And like we're talking about the elites, the
Yeah.
people with all this corruption and all this money, they don't like Elon. I mean, his life's in danger. He said that
Mm.
in an interview. He said he knows his life's in danger, so they're putting extra security on him. He's got his own security team, but they're putting extra security on him because his Tesla stores have been burnt down. He had a couple of them in California burnt, and a couple of
Mm.
trucks that were attacked and burned. And they leveled threats at him. They're leveling threats at Trump too. They want to get rid of him because why? Because what you were talking about, the gray
Mm.
people, the elites, their
Yeah.
corruption, the money that they're taking from the people, the enslaved people, and taking it and using it for their own purposes, stuffing their pockets, and the money that went to Ukraine. Even Lewinsky couldn't come up with what happened to 100 billion, and
Just
so
gone. Yeah.
and then what they say is going to Europe, circling back to the U.S. and the politicians. I just heard a congressman talk about that. He said the money's going over to Europe and coming back, and it's laundered, and then comes back and into the pockets of the politicians. We're talking about the elites, and we're talking about Elon. But like you said, give them a chance. I mean, they're
Yeah. Give them a go. I mean, our lot over here are just openly corrupt. They're openly wrong. They make really bad decisions. They take money off people they shouldn't be taking it off and give it to people they shouldn't be giving it to. And eventually we're going to be overrun. But I think the real game, if you like, is not a physical or an economic one. I think what's going on in the world at large. You just call it stuff. It's just loads of stuff. The money, the wars, all the rest of it. The men in grey, they're more interested in the spiritual side. They're behind the scenes changing religion, they're changing consciousness, they're changing the way we function as human beings. Their primary concern will be things like genetics, mind control, any kind of technology that will give them more power, basically, and move them forward. None of those kind of issues, none of that creative field really has any need for things like money. It doesn't operate on that level. They will find a way to do whatever they want to do by whatever means they want to do it. And that's the back to where we came in at the beginning. It's like serpent eating its tail. That's the essence of the book of Revelation. It's the conflict between good and evil. Now, you can blur the edges and you blur the definitions of good and evil, but at the end of the day, it's still a spiritual battle. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about, battles in the heavens, battles between, you know, otherworldly beings, power, that kind of struggle. That's sort of really what the men in grey are all about. They're on that level. They're sort of next level from stuff. I mean, I look at some of the things that are going on. You watch what some of these governments are doing, and you look and you think, how on earth can they be so stupid?
no,
What on earth are they
right,
doing?
no,
Why is there nobody actually stopping them and pointing out where they're going wrong? Well, the only conclusion I can come, I mean, since lockdown, I've seen a lot of it. The only conclusion I can reach is it's being done on purpose. It's deliberate. It
yeah.
keeps the general population running round and disappearing up its own rear end. Once you're in that state of chaos, you're not a threat to anybody. And I think that's real. I think they genuinely are doing that.
Keep the people scared and fear and put them in,
Yeah,
and you have control. Fear
yeah,
Those people, that's what they know. They
Chuck in a bit of bread and circuses, and off you
no.
go. You know.
Now the people in gray you're talking about are
Yeah.
we've had Dr. David Jacobson, and I love this book. They Walk Amongst Us, ETs.
Yeah.
Now the men in gray, I don't think you really described them because you said you don't really. Are they human in form and they work with us?
I think that they are a race of humans. I think they wear grey suits, but metaphorically speaking. So, you've got the men in black. Well, we all know about the men in black. They wear glasses and, clearing the earth of the scum of the universe, if you believe the movie. So we know all about the men in black. Yeah, okay. Well, imagine the same thing, but grey,
Mhm.
gone, invisible, shadow men disappearing into the background. They probably know what's going on when it comes to interdimensional beings. And, excuse me, they probably are the ambassadors for us to those beings. Why not? They've clearly got something going on that the rest of us don't have going on, and stuff that we don't have access to. So I think there's every possibility that they know far more about existence on planet Earth, and far more about what's coming up, and far more about science, dimensions, etc., than possibly anybody else. They are an elite in that sense.
There,
Um,
there was three videos, Mark, that I saw, and these are real because these are real people in the video. The first one was uh it was Senator Mitch McConnell. He was talking to a group of people, and he had other senators behind him, like Senator Thune and a couple others. He was talking, but and he's having a hard time. He's getting older, and he's getting he's having a hard time. But there was this lady, older lady, about in her late 50s or 60s, must have been some office work or rep staffer or whatever. She comes up and she touches him on the elbow, and he freezes. He doesn't talk anymore. Thune looked over at her and smiled, and so did another senator. They looked over at her and smiled, and she smiled at them, and then she went back. And all she did was touched him on the elbow with something. And so that stopped him from talking. He stood there for about almost 2 minutes before people said, well, let's get him off the stage here. He needs to get off. He's not talking, he's just frozen. There was another Congress lady. She was a black lady, and she was talking, and she was a Democrat. She was on a committee. There was a younger lady, about 30, and behind her, a staffer that you can call a staffer that sits in behind these representatives. They help them out with notes, paperwork, and stuff. So she was sitting there and she was looking around really mysteriously, and she had these dark eyes and dark hair, and she was mumbling every word that this representative was saying. She was doing it, saying it before she even said it. It was kind of like she was telepathically telling this representative what to say and how to say it. But then she noticed the camera was watching her, and then she stopped. She just kind of looked down, and she looked around. She stopped. They caught her, mouthing the words and stuff.
yeah.
And then there's another representative. I forget who he was, what party he was, whatever, but he was standing there in Congress, and he was making his speech, for a bill. And he all of a sudden just went quiet and stood there for about 2, 3 minutes. And people, it was longer. They let him stand there longer. And then he finally started talking. Is this mind control? Maybe
Yeah, I mean the first guy, the first one in particular, where touched the elbow, that could be hypnosis. That's a straightforward technique. The second one, the lady could have been what's called a prompter, which is somebody that then prompts the person in front. And 9 times out of 10, you never see them. Almost all the politicians, without failure, have a prompter somewhere because they corpse. They don't remember what they're doing. And the last guy clearly didn't have a prompter. He corpsed.
yeah.
And, what do you do? It's like rabbit in headlights syndrome. Um, yes, in a way, it is a bit sinister because they can do that, but that's the kind of level, but even more so. If you could do mind control over a long distance, I mean, the Russians have been looking into it since the 1950s. If you could mind control over a long distance, that would be a sort of Manning Gray type power. It's not something that they would publicly acknowledge they were capable of doing. Certainly, genetics has fallen under that blanket heading as well. I think they've been mucking about with genetics for years and years, decades. But they're only now beginning to admit that, in some of these weird labs out in the middle of the jungle in China and that, they are changing human genes. They're mucking about with it. Hence the mRNA vaccine that changes your genetic makeup. They've been experimenting with that gene therapy and what have you, absolutely for ages. They're miles ahead, further ahead than we could possibly imagine, 30 or 40 years ahead of where we think they are. And it's things like that that are blanket covered. We talked about, did we go to the moon? The answer is no, we didn't. We didn't go. We never have gone. All this space stuff and that, absolute, complete and utter nonsense. And Elon Musk knows that it's complete and utter nonsense, but he's towing the party line for the men in grey. That's what's happening because, NASA is a technology company. It has its secrets. It's blanket covered again. So you can see where I'm going with this. There's all these different aspects, food additives, advertising control, lighting being used for manipulation, chemicals being introduced into our water supplies, our atmosphere, and things like that. All of these different things, some of them might be fantastic. It might be the best thing ever. Some of them probably not, and quite a few are experimental. And we just don't get to know about them. We see them. We see the shape of the jigsaw puzzle piece, but we don't see the piece itself. And that's how they like to keep it.
Yeah, the secrets that they give. I heard there's a secret space program. Werner von Braun started it back in the late 50s or in the 50s, and that continues to this day. But it goes off to the side, and there's what they call dark money from Congress. Something like I don't know how many billions of dollars it goes, and they can't ask any questions about it. It goes to secret dark projects, and they can't ask questions about it. Well, that is in itself is mysterious, but I'm following now what the Pope is going on, and you just mentioned the Vatican's library, and Pope Francis said last November, even before this kind of started, the aerial stuff, he said that you're going to see more supernatural things. He said, so be ready to see supernatural things that you have never seen before. We're talking about cryptids, things in the sky, and weird things that are showing to us. He must know ahead of time that this dimensional veil is starting to open up to us, and we're going from 3D to 5D. And he said himself that he apologized to people and said the Sabbath is not on a Sunday, it's a Saturday. And he said, the church has told people a lot of fibs or lies. He didn't say come out and say lies. He said wrong things. And he says, I'm here to try to set the record straight because he knows he's dying. He's actually dying. And he's wanting to get that off his chest about everything. And he talks about ETs. He says that they're real. And he says when they get here, he said he wants to meet them. They're welcome to the Vatican. So this guy knows. And Mark, could you shine some light on the Catholic religion and their library that they have?
Well, yeah, I could shine a bit more darkness on it. I mean, the biggest criticism of the library is that they never tell you what's in it, and they never seem to release anything from it. But it's not like it was in Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. That's not what the library looks like, because in that particular movie, there's the big glass room that they're in with everything neatly catalogued, and it's all on shelves. And no, forget that. It's 3.5 miles of basement tunnels with boxes stacked on stacker shelves. Okay. There are tens of thousands of documents in there, and they're not all in readable modern day language. They cover a whole smorgasbord of ancient languages. There's enough stuff in there to keep an army of 50 scholars going for about 100 years. They've had 2,000 years of chucking stuff in there. So if you can imagine what happens when you don't bother to clean your garage out for about 10 years or whatever, times that by 3.5 miles of shelving down in the Vatican basement. So it's not that they don't want to tell you what's in there. I think they genuinely don't have any idea just exactly what they've got. There's more stuff than they can ever do anything about. They can't, it's like opening the door, looking at it, and then shutting the door again, because you really can't do anything with that amount of stuff. Occasionally, occasionally something will tumble out, like the official apology from 1380 that the Pope made to the Knights Templar after the order was dissolved. The official document that actually says, there's nothing wrong with the Templars. They never did any of the things that they were accused of. We don't find any fault with them. Well, that was found about 15 years ago, and it finally made it into print. But, that means from, the early days of biblical archaeology and biblical study, they've now managed to get to 1380. So it took them all that time to get down that rack of shells. It just happened to be where they landed. So I have absolute confidence it's full of everything. There's so many things in there. They were finding Dead Sea Scrolls as long ago as the 3rd, 4th, and 5th century AD. And I think most of those have ended up somewhere in that basement. But it's not anybody's fault. You can't genuinely, you cannot point the finger and accuse them of mass secrecy. It's nothing to do with that. It's just a huge problem that they haven't got a handle on. Having said all that, the Catholic religion's an interesting one, because obviously they're founded on Peter and Paul. They're based in Rome. The Vatican is what it is. It's widely known. It's easy to research what they are. In a strange way, they've managed to keep things going when everybody else seems to have fallen away and collapsed. So taking a pot shot at them as a religion, I think, is it's a bit below the belt, really. Also, they've preserved bits of biblical stuff that other religions have decided to dump. The classic one is Mary. Is Mary Queen of Heaven? Well, the answer is, yeah, she is. Because if you follow Old Testament law, then she's married to God. I'm not even going to go into that. That is such a complex issue. But it's a secret. That is a religious Christian secret. And what we're seeing in the Catholic Church is what the consequences of that are, because she becomes Queen of Heaven. And, relics, flipping Turin Shroud, where would we be without the Catholics if they hadn't kept hold of that? They were collectors. They collected, the signboard off the cross and things like that. They know where the Holy Grail is. There's so many aspects of that. So you've got to sort of, you've got to say thank you for that. On the other hand, yes, there are times where they've really blown it. They've supported the Nazi Party. They've had, ex-Hitler Youth as a pope. Things have gone wrong. It's not always been smooth running, which it kind of goes to show Jesus didn't come to form a church. He didn't come to start a club. But where would we be without the people that did? It's like, in terms of an earthly institution, I've kind of got a bit of a soft spot for the Catholics. I don't think they're all bad. The fact that the Pope's come out, I'd missed that actually, that he'd come out and said the Sabbath is Saturday. It does actually say in the Old Testament, sundown Friday to sundown Saturday is an eternal Sabbath unto the Lord. It says that. They moved it onto Sunday because of the sun, worship of Sol. That was a Roman decision to do that. You can blame Constantine for that.
I know that's in your PowerPoint, and
yeah,
because actually it's relating to today's times, what's going on today with the church, and a lot of people leaving the church, and a lot of people saying that that the Catholics know that Jesus Christ wasn't who we think he was. They're saying all this, and these scholars are coming up with all these different things, and they're talking about, with all the trouble in the world, they're talking about, well, we can talk about the devil. What is your idea about the devil, Mark?
I've got an interesting idea because biblically, so let's go off what we know. He's doing what God's telling him to do. He's the orchestrated, organized questioner. It's an interesting character. He's a fallen angel, so he forget all this, lunatic bat wings and red pointy tail and forget all that. I've played rock and roll. I've been in the rock and roll business, Highway to Hell and all that.
And you've seen the devil.
Flipping nonsense, the whole lot of it. You know what I mean? Absolute rubbish. That's not what the devil looks like at all. So the devil's actually quite attractive. He's an attractive, appealing, a masculine-looking, angelic being, angel, who always takes up the contrary position. The other thing to remember as well is that the devil actually always quotes the Bible correctly, but always manages to do it in such a way that it's out of context.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not dealing with an idiot. You're dealing with a celestial being here whose exact purpose is to get you to turn away from God. And that is part of the plan. I mean, ultimately, what is the Bible? What is the Bible about? I mean, it brings you to that question. The Bible tells you why we went wrong. It's a book of mistakes. Okay, it's a book of errors. It tells you what not to do. That's essentially what that book's all about. It proves beyond all possible doubt that the human race is rubbish, and it's always been rubbish. And that actually the only way to get out of that, to sort of dig your way out of the cesspit, is to go find the being that made everything. Which, again, going back to this idea of, well, is it a Baptist church, a Catholic church? Is it, Protestant church, or what church is it? Forget it. You're not there to go searching for a church. You're there to go searching for the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
Punch through, break through the veil, break through those dimensions, get out there and actually try to communicate to whatever it is that's behind it all. I think that really sums up Jesus as well. I think he's the first of many. He was the first completely human being to realize that actually we can be completely divine without anybody else's assistance, without anybody else in the way.
And God is within us. We don't have to go to a church to find it.
Well, are we in God, or is God in us, or is it both?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, anybody that's into magic will understand that, as above, so below. Divine magic, mathematics, structure. God is in it. God is light. God is maths. God is creation. When you look at all the things that God really is, then maybe the end of the Men in Black movie is absolutely true. Where you zoom back and it finishes up as aliens playing with galaxies that are inside marbles. And you just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's kind of God. That's God is like the biggest thing that we know about. But there's absolutely no doubt. I mean, for thousands of years, possibly hundreds of thousands of years, human beings as creatures have been running around knowing full well that there's something there. There's something there behind it all. You can't escape it. I've got a couple of friends, this will perhaps amaze people. I've got a couple of friends who are actually Satanists. That's what they are. And they admit that they are following the opposition that's in opposition to God. So that means they have to believe in the existence of God in order to believe in the existence of the opposition. You see what it is? It's like an oxymoron. It's like a contradiction. No matter how evil you get, if you're doing that because you're reacting against things that you perceive to be godly, then the human instinct, is to believe in the existence of the divine. And do you know what everybody does? Everybody, doesn't matter what your religion is or what you claim to believe or whatever. I've met pretty much every path you can imagine. And sooner or later, when it comes down to discussing what's behind it all, that's when we start to agree. That's when there's a level of strong human agreement. It's there in the human race, and in a way, we are a chip off the old block. There's a tiny little spark of divine in all of us. We're born from somewhere else, and when we die, we go off to somewhere else. That's the very definition of divinity. We are all gods, little gods.
I wanted to bring that topic towards the end, because that's what we're going through today. A lot of people are struggling to find, affirmation of God and what's going on. The Pope alluded to this. I'm not sure how true this is. I heard he said it. He said that the Antichrist is here on earth now. What do you think about the Antichrist? Is it part devil or whatever, Mark?
Well, there's several different characters, you see. As we have sort of God behind everything that's perceived as good, then the devil is behind everything that's perceived as bad. So the conflict in Revelation, like you say, it's the return of the Son of God. And then it's like this Antichrist, who is the personification of all things evil. But neither of them physically are the thing that's behind them. Do you see what I mean? So there are other things at work here. There was a band many years ago called KLF Foundation. They did all kinds of big musical hits on the dance floor, like Last Train to Trans Central and things like that. One of the guys, the keyboard player, actually spent his fortune going 40 days and 40 nights out of Jerusalem looking for the devil. He was convinced that Lucifer was curled up, asleep in a cave out in the desert 40 days and 40 nights from Jerusalem. Now, the weird thing is, he never came back.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah.
So maybe, just maybe, the Pope is right. You never know.
No,
Maybe,
there's a lot of things coming to a head now, and people are
yeah.
living in fear. They're not as happy as they used to be. I think things are starting to change a little bit. We're seeing a big change in the world, in Europe and in Germany, where they have all these protests. They want to change in government. They want to change in direction. We have it here in the U.S. We have a
Well, we might very well have that here shortly. It's
no,
going that way over here.
no. We got things going on here in the U.S. that we've got a lot of trouble, but we have a man that is very headstrong and very smart, even though a lot of people may not like him. Not a lot. I think maybe 30, 40% of the people don't like him, but he's got a majority on his side in what he's doing.
Mm,
And we're trying to restore order. And I think
yeah.
that's the godly thing to do is to restore order. And people are just, I know myself, I don't feel it. Do you feel it yourself? You feel that the things around you just aren't right? Uh,
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we sort of barreled into lockdown in 2020, I had a very strong feeling. It was like, this is it. They're firing the starting pistol now. We're going into what the Christians refer to as the end times. We're actually entering a phase now that is fundamentally different from anything else we've seen. And to be honest with you, what I'm seeing in the world at large, it's not changing my opinion of that. The unrest in the Middle East is rocketing. Racial tensions are rocketing, the economy's going all over the place. You've got all these weird people in power, all kinds of strangeness going on. And out of all of that, you could easily see that, Revelation end of the world scenario developing. What is interesting, though, is when people use the word apocalypse, what the word apocalypse means is a drastic change. It doesn't mean bang and the world is gone. That's not what apocalypse means. It's talking about transformation and it's talking about change. And that's what I see from the biblical point of view. There's always somebody somewhere left at the end of it all. There's no complete ending of it. And again, just to pick up on the way people feel, and I wouldn't want people to go away feeling depressed. But if you have a belief, even if you just believe in flying saucers and nothing else, if that is your belief system, and you're prepared to accept that there are other dimensions, you should also be prepared to accept that death is not the end. Now, as soon as you know that, everything else is just, as I said earlier on, it's just stuff. It's stuff. Stuff happens, stuff comes and goes. You have something one day and you don't have it the next day, and it's just a path of life. It's just a flickering moment in the cosmos. It's only a tiny moment, but people need to sort of hang on to the fact that no matter how good or bad it happens to be here, sooner or later nobody gets out of here alive. Nobody. Nobody does. So we're like a bunch of ants arguing over a blade of grass, in terms of cosmic existence. And as soon as you realize that, once you accept that, you think, well, I'm only dealing with stuff. It's some days it's good, some days it's bad, some days it'll get better, some days it'll get worse. And you just kind of ride the journey. It becomes a journey.
Life is a learning, strategy.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the other thing I wanted to say about this, there is, I had even my mom, she's 97. And of course, when people get really old, they kind of start thinking, okay, where am I going? What's going to happen?
yeah.
I told my mom, I looked her straight in the eyes. I said, Mom, don't ever doubt that there's another side of this life. You're
Mm,
going on into another dimension. We don't know exactly where you're going, but you are going
yeah,
because I've seen the other side
yeah,
in lucid dreams and in visitations that I've had. And I've seen the dimensional side of things. And I know there is another side. It's dimensional. It's there. and you know yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
this
I
is
mean, as an archaeologist, I can confidently say that for tens of thousands of years, not just thousands, but tens of thousands of years, we as human beings have always believed that we go to somewhere else,
Mhm.
and all the archaeology, spirituality, temples, belief systems, archaeological sites, everything all tell me that that's what people believed. That's what they believed. So it's no different now. Absolutely no different now at all.
I know it, and you know it.
Yeah.
That's what they talk about consciousness. People
Yeah.
need to be more, if they can meditate and get out of themselves for a little bit. I can meditate to somewhat, but I've always had a hard time because my mind's always spinning. I don't know why. But that's the drummer in us. Your
Well,
mind.
yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, I was just going to say, you always get an earworm. You
Yeah,
end up with a tune that you can't get rid of or something.
yeah. Us drummers are a little different than
Yeah,
even bands know it. They always say, "Oh, you want to know who's crazy? It's always the
uh,
drummer that's crazy."
yeah. Bands are always made up of like three musicians and a drummer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's what time we got to, it's been an hour and a half, and
really?
we've had a great
Wow.
time. And I want to close the show by having you tell us, Mark, Ollie, how we can find out more about you, and I'll put this in a narrative when I post it. Mark, tell us a little bit how we can get.
Okay, dead easy. I'm a really easy, simple kind of guy. I don't like doing things complicated. If you want to come and find me, I'm on Facebook. You can just look me up and then you can send me messages and all kinds of nonsense. And I only do Facebook. So that's where you'll find me. If you want me books or you want any other product that's commercially available, I would suggest Amazon because they're all on Amazon. And that's the only place you'll get them, unless you can find out what the publishers are and go knock on their door. But everything should be available on Amazon. And then if you want to binge watch a load of stuff with me and go and have a look on YouTube, because all my archive now, television programs, documentaries, everything I've ever done is out there. So go and do a search. And so it's basically either Facebook, Amazon, or YouTube. That's where you'll find me.
Great. I've had a good time as usual.
Yeah.
You're always a constant guest on this program. Always.
Yeah, just can't get rid of me once I'm here, you mean?
No, I had a hard time getting you to schedule a show the last couple of months.
Uh,
Busy. You,
yeah, yeah.
you've had the wind in it for a while, so yeah. So, but no, glad to get you on the show
Yeah.
and talk. It's always interesting, and I really love it. And you've been listening to the Strange Reality Show with Dave Emmons and my special guest Mark Ollie. Great guy. Look him up, and when I put the narrative out and I dropped the video, thank you so much, Mark, for the show.
Thank you for having me.